Getting help?
Yeah.
Are we ready? Then let's bring the land bank meeting to order. And on the agenda tonight, we have we have minutes from the last meeting.
Tyler?
It's on page 3.
Page 3.
I saw no problems with the minutes.
Neither did I. Motion?
Is that a motion?
I make a motion to accept the minutes from the August 5th land bank meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the August 5th land bank meeting on
Correction, that's the August 19th.
August 19th. Thank
August
you.
19th land bank meeting.
Is there any further discussion?
None here?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it 5-0. Now we have consideration of schedule of the Board of Trustees of the Land Bank, including the creation of the ad hoc committee to provide input for the draft of possible mission, goals, and policies of the Land Bank.
Mayor, Commissioners, or Chair and board members, whatever we need to call you. At the last meeting, you talked about the possibility of creating an ad hoc committee that would be comprised of community members representing various business interests within the community that would be involved to a certain extent in what we do with all of these properties. To go over the discussion about the policies, the goals, procedures, the whole 9 yards. So have been receiving names, and I tried to put that list together. I put them down as yes, maybes, and others. I've already been told that that may not be 100% correct, but part of the discussion, or at least the thinking out loud we've had, at least the staff level, is size of the committee, and the idea was hopefully keep it down around 7. That's a very workable committee. 9 is pushing the outside limit. Beyond that, you kind of get, it gets hard to get things done. You've got those names in front of you, and the hope is that if the board is of mind to move forward with creating an ad hoc committee, you can take steps to do that tonight and name who it is that you'd like to sit on that committee, and then we can start pulling the organizational group together to get that moving. The second thing that we did was present a timeline. It really kind of mirrors the steps that, if you'll recall at the last meeting, the consensus of the board was that we need to move towards the idea of accepting the properties that came out of the tax sale effective as of January 1 of 2015. Between now and then, there needs to be a lot of work on confirming exactly what this board would do with respect to properties that would be made available for sale, performance requirements and other conditions of future sales, what you might consider for actually conveying property to bidders, how you would market and manage the properties in the interim, what other uses might be done with some of those properties, because we may not have them all as single-family residential lots, but there may be other uses. And we put all of that together on the little handout sheet. The idea would be that, presuming that the committee was put together effective tonight, we try to get at least an organizational meeting of whoever you would name as early as next Monday. That's flexible, obviously, and would obviously adjust if we don't get the committee formed and created tonight. But I listed out there items A through K, whatever that works up to, 6, 8, 10, 11 items that we felt are within the purview of what that committee needs to provide some input back to this board on, because they all address and impact issues and policy decisions of what you do as the stewards of the land that would go into the land bank on behalf of the citizens of the city. And they're essentially consistent with the goal documents that we put out earlier from a topic standpoint. Now, that's not saying, I mean, they may come back and say, no, can this, or do something else different altogether, or add something to the list. But one, beginning with just a discussion of are the goals that we've stated in that consistent with where we need to be. We've classified properties by various types. Most of them are going to be vacant lots right now, but in time, who's to say what may happen? There's been discussion about, well, what happens if we get into, like was discussed with the city of Lyons, where they had an abandoned or an out-of-town owner, absentee owner on a home that had been declared dilapidated and needed to be demolished. Rather than go through that process, they had the opportunity to accept that property as a gift to the land bank, and then everything was processed through that. So that's another classification. There's, who knows where this may go to, and then we may never get to all those classes, but at least it's talked about. Then there's the management policy of what we do with the land in the interim, the idea of how we might go about marketing the properties, policies concerning qualification of buyers, performance requirements of buyers, how we handle special assessments in the future, which markets should, or which lots should be identified for marketing or making available first, and in phases after that, what properties may need to be looked at for other uses, which would entail rezoning and or replatting, which properties might be best made available for other public uses, and they do not go back on the tax rolls, but maybe they address other needs. We talked about issues such as parks, possibly some building sites for other public buildings, perhaps schools. There's any number of things that ought to be talked about, and then just any other issue that may come up. So you're asking the group, obviously, to weigh in on a large agenda and a broad range of items, but they're all things that you as a board ultimately need to make some decisions on with respect to what you want to do moving forward. So the assumption that I had in putting this together was you're going to ask the haddock group to weigh in on all these things, not all at one time, but we'll create an order and we'll go through and start identifying those things, but it just shows the breadth and complexity of the issues that we've got before us. But you know, as the old adage of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. That's kind of what we're doing. We're taking one bite at a time. The target date is to definitely have this back to the board, at least with the major initial actions concerning the critical things, which I would think would be things such as the first lots that ought to be made available and certain performance requirements and conditions on sale and how we handle those sales by the end of this year, because we're working on a concept that the land bank takes possession as of January 1, 2015. And as you'll recall from the map that's still up here, the lots that are identified blue will be eligible to pass title to immediately. Because effective the end of this month, we are in September, it scares me, but the end of this month, all the properties that went through the 2013 sale will have passed the 1 year limitation or whatever term it is to clear the 1 year
challenge lawsuit
time from the date the courts finalized the 2013 sale, which is an action that the courts basically say is you went through the proper steps, you put these up for sale, nobody bid these, and according to what Lloyd Graham has said, that by default, effectively, what that does is put that into the hands of the county commission at that point. They're in a position to convey it to the land bank, but you've got that 1 year time that's got to elapse. That all happens for the 2013 properties effective at the end of September. There are a couple of dates, like the 25th and the 30th or something of that nature, but effectively by the end of September, they would be eligible for passing clear title and being able to get a title insurance company to give you title to a potential buyer. The 2014 lots, the magic date in round numbers is the end of June 2015. But a lot of those things, you know, you look at the things that we're talking about doing, there's a lot of work to be done. And even if, say for the sake of discussion, they identify some properties that we think, well, we'd like to put these on the market fairly early, but they need to be replatted, rezoned, That's gonna take time, because you as a board have to initiate action to convey to, I don't know whether they have the authority to do that on their own, or whether they have to ask the governing body, which is themselves, to endorse it, but we then have to start that process, prepare whatever needs to be done, then walk through the rezoning and or replatting process, which in and of itself will take roughly 60 days. So it's not unreasonable to say, you take it 1-1, get a report shortly thereafter, identify some stuff we want to do some rezone and plating on, and it may be end of May, 1st of June before you finish that process to be in a position to sell something anyway. So it's not, we're not acting too fast, nor are we moving too slow. I think, given where we are, we're doing about as much as we can to herd as big and large a herd of cats as we've got.
Exactly.
So, that's the topics, and anybody else has got any other thoughts on that list of items? That's why I put K on there. Any other issue of concern that you or the ad hoc committee would identify that they feel ought to be addressed, the intent would be to try to move that forward. Obviously, the sooner we get started, the quicker we can get through the critical things, because even though we've got a date of the end of December, holidays hit pretty hard the end of the year, and it's hard to get people to come to meetings. And there's a lot that needs to be done, and a lot of work will need to be done as well. The upside is we're not blazing a new path. We've got the ability to look at what other communities have done, use documents they've done, visit with those folks, get that information to where we don't have to completely reinvent a wheel. The other side of that coin is, as was pointed out last meeting, this is probably the largest operation of its kind, we know, at least in the state, and so we are going to be inventing a wheel to a certain extent of what we do with some of this stuff. But I look at that as a positive challenge and an opportunity to do some pretty unique and wonderful things for the community, rather than a burden that is a woe is me condition that we ought to just kind of shy away from this at all. So I guess first thing would be, do you have any other thoughts on the timeline or the tasks that we've talked about? And then if not, we can move then into the idea of the ad hoc committee, and you can discuss the names and go forward from there.
I do have a question. When I look at probably some of the discussion of the complexities of the issues that you have, or these 10 items, and we're asking for a report to be completed by the end of the year, how damaging, for lack of a word, would it be, or what's the longest that we'd want that report to drag out, like February? What is actually critical?
Haven't got into the point of where, I don't have a feel for that. I don't know whether Cheryl or Katie or anybody, I mean, if we take possession January 1, there's no
You
gun to our
could
head to
adopt,
move the
that's
property.
right. You could adopt your report later than that.
Okay.
January 1st was important to get the property off the tax rolls.
Okay.
Right.
But the
It's off-
rest of it isn't driven by anything.
But we're, I
The
put this in
sooner
there-
you can get it done,
Yes,
the
and
better
I
off.
put that in there too, as an incentive to try to get people to try to make some decisions and move forward, rather than drag
Right.
this on forever. You know, I mean, we can make the arguments that, yeah, the communities beat this drum of, oh, woe is me type thing. Look at the burden we have for 7, 8, 9 years, but that's not solving the problem. We want to try to move forward and say, how do we solve this problem?
Right.
I don't really think that the ad hoc committee's work is done at the end of the year either. I think it's gonna be ongoing. When you're looking at phased development of all these different large tracts of land, it's not, I don't think 3 months is enough to say, well, we're gonna sell these lots this year and these lots next year. It's an ongoing,
Well, and it's a little hard to predict exactly how you might use this as a standing advisory group anyway, because while we were tasking them initially with some input on policy questions, once that gets done, yes, there's other issues over time that you may want to go back to the group and ask for, but then you've got to be careful about, you get into the, well, we can't really sell a lot when we have an opportunity until the ad hoc committee weighs in on something. Was that right? I mean, no, you've got other groups that maybe ought to weigh in. We're taking this as the reason I use that term ad hoc, for lack of a better term, was simply to say, this is the group you're asking for to kind of help lay the foundation. What might happen going forward is up to this board of what you want to do. If you'll recall in some of the information we've given to you earlier, the only other standing land bank boards that we're actively aware of in the state are Unified Government, Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, here, the City of Lyons, and the City of Hutchinson. Everybody except the City of Hutchinson, the governing body functions as the Board of Trustees. The City of Hutchinson set up, which the statutes authorize, a separate Board of Trustees. There are governing body members on that board, but there are other community members that sit on that governing board. So they've kind of created their own condition to where they have those people providing input, but they're in the policy-making role there rather than an advisory role. So I don't think anybody's looking at this as, one, once you're appointed, you're on for life type thing. Two, the ad hoc committee may serve its purpose through getting the policies put in place and then may dissolve, and you retain the right under your bylaws to create something to function in a different capacity or the same with different players at a point in the future. Or you could decide, I suppose, if you want to evolve that into a standing advisory board of some form, we can talk about that, of how we might want to structure that. But that, to me, would be something maybe a little more down the road. It's a little speculative at this point to think how you might do, what you might ask them to do.
Well, I think initially, A, B, and C were pretty much in agreement on the Board of Trustees. And then probably the next thing on that list that ought to go to the ad hoc committee would be H, to work on what that committee thinks needs to be presented to go into the land bank. And then as those are ticked off as they go, that prioritization, is the ad hoc committee going to come up and bite pieces of this off at a time, or is it going to be on January 31st, here it is, or December 31st, here it is, take it or leave it?
That's up to you guys. One, these are not in procedural order. They were just listed based on how we put them in the original
Right.
document. So I did not intend that to be, they had to be done this order. Two, you guys can convey that, you know, and we'd like to have a hard answer for these things by the end of November, and then the other stuff will probably bleed on into the next year and maybe not be as critical that we meet as often or whatever. It's still very much an amoeba that's
Well, it
moving
just
around.
seems to be, that list is overwhelming just to hand to some folks and say, okay, let us know when you're done, and then we'll tell you whether we agree with you or not. And I was thinking that A, B, and C, well, we could probably say, yes, we've reviewed that multiple times, and it appears at this point with that review that those are a go.
Some of the psychology behind that, though, is also to, and I'm thinking out loud, guys, ask them to weigh in on that. If they're in agreement, then you've got one, some achievement from the committee, and two, you've got a concurrence that we're all on the same page.
Sure.
Because you don't want to get partway through and somebody say, oh, I didn't know you intended to do this goal, that's not what I thought we were doing, type thing. So, yeah, it's a big elephant, and it's intimidating to look at. But the intention is to say that, you know, we get started now, you've got roughly 4 months to walk through, and not all of the, and this board needs to give some direction to say, we need these looked at first, guys. And if we don't make the 31st, no, the cops aren't going to show up and put you in jail or none of that kind of stuff. None of that's going to happen, so.
And that was why I asked that question. you
Sure.
know, If it was that black and white, or depending on the depth of that group's conversation, what comes back to us and what additional conversation we had,
Right.
Is there that leeway? And so
Yeah.
I'm understanding that
And-
there would be that, because we want a good product and not
It's
even want to.
entirely conceivable, I mean, at least, and again, this is just working through my own thought process. To me, the biggest challenge is really going to be what you do in D, E, F, and G, which is structure how you intend to market the properties, and then look at qualification of buyers, requirements on performance of buyers. I mean, what's the objective we're trying to achieve here? And then the biggie is going to be, gee, what do you do with the special assessments in the future? That's going to be the, but, you know, it also goes back to, and I thought I had that listed in there, but it was part of the marketing plan is also determining what are we doing with the price on the lots? And I'm sure you've heard it because we have. It's all the way from whatever the market says they're worth to no give them away. That's a pretty big gap. And that's all part of needs to be evaluated, discussed, and you guys need to have that input from a group that's tasked with the understanding that we're trying to do what's in the best interest of the citizens as a whole, particularly with respect to trying to recover monies that have already been spent through payments on the bonds that were not ever collected off these specials that are wiped off because of the tax sale. But more importantly, how we might structure it to minimize the impact going forward on the citizens as a whole. And that's, to me, that's the key of what we're asking this group to do, ultimately what you're being tasked to do as the Board of Trustees. So, Cheryl?
I guess I fell asleep in the meeting that you adopted A, B, and C because I don't know of any goals, I don't know of any classifications, and I don't know of any management policy that we've done. So
What was
make me-
sent in the draft form was the goals, was the classification, and I thought was the management where city staff was going to be the management.
But nothing's been
We haven't
adopted by
voted
this
on-
commission. It's
voted on
simply for
anything.
discussion
No, I
only.
understand that. It's still in draft, but my point was, if we didn't have to burden the ad hoc.
No, the point of the,
we
I thought the
could
point of the
give
committee
them-
was.
Well, we could give them the go-ahead saying that, what do you think? We think so far it's okay.
Well, and it could be very well that A, B, and C just simply say the consensus of the board is that this is the direction we want to go. We want your input before we make final adoption. The other items were draft form for discussion purposes.
Right.
And we need a whole lot more discussion before we get there.
Okay.
So, no, I'm not reading any formal, there hasn't been any formal adoption of anything other than the
No.
bylaws. But in terms of goals and policies and that kind of stuff, they're still in draft form. But yeah, I would say, I would concur with the conclusion that the consensus of the board was okay with at least that part of it, although we've not formally adopted anything.
Right, but the point of the ad hoc committee was to take those to the board and say, we're okay, but are you, as the public,
Are you-
okay? Because I've already heard comment back from public that's saying, oh, no, we
Yeah.
don't like what's been drafted at all.
Yeah,
Okay,
and you need to hear
Oh.
that. So,
A couple of people have said that.
okay.
The way I see this meeting kicking off, as projected on the 8th, if we come in and we brief them first, because we can have all the commission meetings that we want and land bank meetings, that doesn't automatically assume that the people that we're selecting for the board are as up to date as we are. My initial concept is we come in, we brief them on what we have currently, so they'll be informed, up to date with where we are and where we're thinking about going. And these are our goals, and these are things that we're looking at, items A through K. We take their input because just like the city manager said, they're giving us comments already. And so, purpose of the ad hoc is to be there, that's the community representation that we don't hear from. And with the specifics that we have here, there's a lot of folks that are the smart people in this community. There's probably a lot more, but we can't build the whole board, the ad hoc committee, from the entire community. So it's a good representation. I see us meeting at least once a month with them, keeping them informed and keeping them abreast of what the Board of Trustees is doing. You don't turn them off 1 January or 15 January. We see what the purpose is, and if they want to stay involved, it helps the city, it helps the community. So this needs to be a community united thing.
this is how, in my mind, it would work. You begin the first meeting potentially as quickly as next Monday
Exactly.
to organize and basically give them the outline. Here's the documents been prepared, here's the maps, here's what the tasks are, here's what the statutes say. Kind of bring everybody up together, up to the same speed, and not ask them to do much beyond getting organized.
Exactly.
That's about all you're going to be able to achieve at an initial meeting anyway.
But the important thing is that they understand what it is that they're what they're being asked to be done. From then, we set a schedule of which ones are we going to tackle first. And we kind of believe that we're looking at least meeting twice a month, maybe more often, to at least get some of the issues ticked off the list, because some of it's going to take more than one meeting to kick the can around the room for a while, because it's going to take a while. But that's also why, if you, and you all pretty well know the names on the list, I'm sure, but that's why, in particular, I think a lot of focus has been geared towards people with financial interests, the bankers, realtors, appraisers, builders, other folks invested in active in that business, to kind of bring in that additional discussion in a formal setting.
Exactly.
That's not a coffee shop clash, that is aimed and tasked with, okay, guys, here's what we see. You guys work in the marketplace every day. You know what's going on out there.
Exactly.
And not only is the question going to be, what should we do with these lots to be fair and equitable in the marketplace and not disruptive, but at the same time, you've got the interest of the taxpayers to also take into account, which is, for some of these folks, may be a little bit of a different venue than they've been in before, because, and then we've got other issues that have been talked about too, of making sure that everybody's aware of serving on this ad hoc committee. Does that cloud or impugn any ability to pursue land bank properties in the future? Or what role can they play? And are they able to maintain a true arm's length action with respect to advisory to the Land Bank Board of Trustees, and then to convey or carry on my business interests in the private sector? That's a challenge that they're going to have to work with as well. And everybody needs to be aware. We're trying to be as open and as transparent as we possibly can, so that nobody at the end of the session is going to say, well, you know, Mr. X or Miss Y was on there to make sure they feathered their own nest, because that's not what we want to be a part of, and I don't think that's what any of you want to be part of as well.
Sounds good. So we set a time for Monday, the 8th, or is that Tuesday? That's Monday.
You need a point of order first.
Is that where we're at now, appointing the board?
Yeah, I guess we are up to the board.
At this point, I'd say yes, if you're in a position to say, yes, we want to move forward with the committee. To me, the questions would be, how many members are we talking about? And then from the list, we pare down from there.
Well, I wanted to see longtime Junction City residents, and I wanted to see people that are experts in their field and have done it for many years, not ones that have taken up, the last few years or whatever, or have other day jobs as well. I had specifically spoken to Richard Rothfuss, Randy Hildstab, Leon Osborne, Lance Custer, Robert Munson, Gary Younghans, and Lori Kreitz. Sheila Burdette has another thing going on, so she did not want to be included on that. She respectfully declined. I talked to Todd Fawcett over at JCAT as a title person. And then I think we were talking about maybe looking at an appraiser like Bob Wally or something like that on there as well.
Sheila is a licensed appraiser as well, but if she's not available.
Yeah,
and I did talk with Bob just a little bit ago, and he said that he understood exactly what we're trying to do and would be willing to assist, but his business he's got like 6 or 7 counties that he does work on, and he said it's hard to find time. He would not object to serving. His problem was meeting that often. He didn't know if he could make the meetings. I even offered to hold him at his house so he'd be there, but he didn't.
Sheila was nominated to some judicial committee recently, so she's not going to have time for that. So to scratch her off the list.
Good. I'd visited with Tom Brungart just because I thought it might be good to have somebody from the school board represented there, just to keep the school's ideas in everybody's mind. And Randall Zimmerman has quite a bit of rental property in town, besides being the football coach here. And
He's a busy guy.
And he was very excited when I talked to him. And Noah would really like to become involved in working and helping with the city because he likes the city, but he is not a professional builder.
Who's
But
that?
Noah Laura, he is a businessman in town, owns the La Fiesta.
Okay, okay.
Richard Rothfuss and Randy Hiltzab are longtime contractors here, and I don't think you can find two better experts in that area anywhere.
I think the first three go without saying, that are longtime residents and professionals in their field that would be very helpful.
That's what I thought.
Then you get into the realtors and the bankers, but the top three, I think they'd be great on this committee.
Right.
Maybe you should decide how many you want on it, then decide your final names, because you've already got 3. If you're limiting it to 7, which is, 7 is considered the optimum size of any board. And you'll need one, I would assume you're gonna have a city commission representative to be on the board.
I'd like to be on it.
So
Well, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring.
You
'Cause
could
I'm
have
always
as
talking to
many
these
as you
people already.
want, because these are going to be, sometimes
gonna be open
committees will
meetings?
have a certain number of commissioners so that they don't have to be public meetings, but these have to, I think we've all decided that these are going to be public meetings anyway,
On the
even
quorum.
if the ad hoc didn't technically have to be a public meeting. I
Should.
think we've decided it should be.
Should be.
So it really doesn't matter how many of you sit on the committee if you all want
If
to,
you all
or if you want to
attend, yeah, attend.
even if you're not on the committee, they're going to be public meetings.
And even if you name them, getting them all to show up at every meeting is not always going to happen.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. You might want to have 9 anyway, just in case some folks
Exactly.
couldn't make it.
Right.
Yeah, 9,
If you're having this many, if
Nine.
you're having one meeting, okay, but if
That's-
you're gonna have several.
That's a good
9,
point.
9's a good number. Just don't go over 9. Usually
No,
that's
no,
get.
I get it. I'm with you.
Yeah, just like we found on our animal shelter. If you get beyond the 9, it's like gets out of control really
But we
quickly.
had some people drop off, so
We did, so 9 would be a good number. And likely the chair of this ad hoc should likely be the sitting commissioner that's on the board.
well, let's only get the rest of the names kind of taken care
Yeah.
of first.
Yeah.
So we thinking 9 is a good
9.
number?
Yes.
Or 7? 9? We have a
Fine with
consensus of 9?
If you took one of the board members to serve on this committee and act as the chair and put 8 other people on there, you've got your 9.
Yep.
I'm fine with 9. I think you're right. You're gonna have some folks that
Some will not.
Can't make it.
a meeting or
Right.
2, so we find 8.
So we need a motion to agree to the 9?
Yeah, that'd be appropriate.
Very-
I'll move to appoint an ad hoc committee of not to exceed 9 members.
There you go.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve 9 members of the ad hoc committee. Is there any further discussion?
None here?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it.
Now, I'm gonna ask, because, as we were talking, and if we have a commissioner on there, do I need to make another motion that, that 9-member committee, one of those persons needs to be a currently sitting city commissioner, and that they would chair that?
You
Or
can,
would it be a trustee member?
or you could, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you,
Semantics.
I would think you could
Trustee.
also, in naming the members, you could name a standing board member and name them as the chair in the motion to, as well, but a separate motion might work better.
It doesn't matter, yeah, because you're going to want the commission member to be a sitting commissioner. So I'd do it by separate motion, and then you can designate who that person's going to be.
Okay.
But keeping in mind that you can all really attend the meetings, you know, the,
After I had
Of
made
that
the
per-
original motion, then we had talked about having
Yeah.
a trustee or commissioner and
Uh-huh.
on there. I didn't know if we needed to maybe clarify that.
well, since it wasn't in your original motion, I suggest you make it by a separate motion.
And the reason I suggested it be a commission trustee member, because then you can be the driver and the pusher of the getting things done and in the order in which they're done.
I got no problem with it, but like I said, I had that thought after I'd made the motion. I'll move I'll move that a current sitting trustee commissioner be a member of the ad hoc committee and serve as chairperson of that committee.
And one of the 9 of the committee.
Yeah, that's what he,
I just wanted-
Second.
I have a motion and a second to have a trustee be one of the 9 members on the ad hoc committee. Is there any further discussion?
I believe for the, and this is me thinking, I think the members, like she said, we all can attend, but I think it should be the mayor or the vice mayor, unless they're not available. But I plan to make the meetings regardless. But I figure you table and chair this meeting, you're the standing mayor and vice mayor, and by position alone, unless someone sees it otherwise, I see you being the standing head and the alternate for the land bank.
Although you're on several committees as it is,
Yes.
and I'm not sure you want to wear another hat. That's your-
I'm not
your
sure
call.
that's such a requirement, as long as we have a trustee that is chairing it. Because that changes.
Okay.
And if this goes on for another year, then that changes. So,
Yeah, there's an election next April anyway, so you never know what'll happen, so.
yeah, there's,
Yeah, 3 of us are out.
Is there any other discussion? And do I need to repeat the motion?
Not for me.
We're
All in
good.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it 5-0. And now back to paring this down to 8 people off the list.
well, you need to designate who on
Need to
that
Off the
designate a chair.
designation.
would be the,
I would offer to do it.
And we've had 2 people offer to do it.
I'm good, I'll just show up. I have a plate full already, but I plan to make these. So
And-
Commissioner Landis can be the lead if we want to do it that way.
I plan on making as many of them as I can, but
Same here.
I am pretty busy.
Whether they're in the evenings or at lunch, I can do it. Which I think we get more done in the evening,
You would.
so.
make a motion to,
designate.
I was going to say select, vote and designate
Sentence.
Commissioner Landis as the chair of the ad hoc committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to appoint trustee Landis to the position to chair.
I should abstain, right?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
I abstain.
Passed 4-0 with 1 abstention.
And if you're not available, just let one of us know, so we'll be there.
Perfect. Getting back to the list, I think Lance and Gary and Lori just have a ton of experience in real estate. And just talking to each one of them about this, they're really excited about providing some input. They've been doing this a long time. They have a lot of experience in this community. They've seen what's worked and what hasn't worked, and they know the market. And they are realtors and do this quite a while. So I think their input is really critical.
So all 3 of them are realtors?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Younghands does mainly rentals, but, you know, they deal with properties, property acquisition, and that kind of thing too, so.
Is there a banker on this list?
Mr. Munson.
Robert Munson.
Munson, he's also a banker?
Central National Bank.
Central.
See how much I know?
Has anyone talked with him?
I did,
He's interested?
yes,
Okay.
that's, yeah. All these folks that I've talked to, except for Mr. Fawcett and Mr. Wally, are confirmed that they would like to be a part of it, except for Ms. Burdette. She has declined.
You said Mr. Fawcett is in agreement, or you haven't?
Todd he's thinking about it. I talked to him today. Had trouble getting a hold of him last week. But he has a ton of experience in title work. I thought that might be an additional bonus for us as well.
Could you have alternates in case somebody misses a couple meetings and then you say, okay, we're gonna.
That's the other thing too. I mean, even the committee, you can still have a committee and then you can have some other people come in and throw in their 2 cents. You know, that's their public comment or whatever you want to do. Let's say, you know, we need some advice from an appraiser. We can have Mr. Wally come to that meeting and he can talk to us. So just because he's not on the committee doesn't mean he can't have input. So.
Who talked to Mr. Zimmerman?
I did.
And he's got time? He has time?
Yeah, and he was very excited about it. When I mentioned it to him, I told him, I said, I don't need to know right now. I said, think it over. And he
Football
said,
coach with time?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
During football season, but
I
then,
was gonna say,
but then
after-
Tom's got the same thing.
Yeah, Tom's busy.
yeah, Tom's
That's what I'm
running the
concerned about. I
campaign.
mean, Randall's busy through the end of October,
Right.
so we need to get going now. I just don't know. I mean, he's a great guy and I'd like to have him, but I'm not sure it's gonna work out for a schedule.
I think that perspective that he would bring would be somewhat different than a realtor
And that's okay.
and a banker. I think he has a little different perspective that may help out. And looking at the list, if you looked at the top, Rothfuss, Hellstab, Osborne, Custer, Munson, Younghands, plus Landis, that's 7.
Kreitz is 8.
She, Mrs. Burdett's out, so then that leaves
Roy Kreitz is an appraiser.
Kreitz as an appraiser.
Oh, well,
That would
then-
be
then we're
That
good.
helps.
So then that's, I would say Lori's the 8th, and then a decision between Brungart, Lara, and Zimmerman, and I would say Zimmerman would be the 9th, in my opinion. So, I mean,
I don't have a problem with that.
that fills out the 9.
Sounds good to me.
Somebody make a motion and list those names, if you're ready to.
And then same thing with Mr. Fawcett, we can just call him in as needed for expertise,
Because he's going to be busy and
Right.
and he wants to lend help to the committee anyway.
If we've
so-
got something going on his ticket that night that
Right.
we'd like to have him come down and give us some advice, it'd be great. You think?
Yeah. There's nothing that says that, at least we're not taking that there wouldn't be some opportunity to bring some other folks with expertise. We may even want to talk to other communities and see if they have folks that would want to come and talk to us as well. And the idea is to try to bring as many people into the equation that we can get as much information in front of the ad hoc committee as well as this board as we move forward.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion then. To submit the below names for the Land Bank Ad Hoc Committee. Pat Landis, Chair. Richard Rothfuss, Randy Hellstab, Leon Osborne, Lance Custer, Robert Munson, Gary Younghands, Lori Kreitz, and Randall Zimmerman.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 9 members just read. Is there any further discussion?
In here.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I'll abstain again.
And it passed 4-0 with one abstention.
We will contact all of these folks as rapidly as we can and tentatively target an organizational meeting Monday or as close thereafter as we can get it to get this up and running. And then we'll come back to you with a list of kind of meeting schedule and what we're wanting to do. So, and I would take from the discussion this evening, I don't know that we need a separate motion unless Katie says otherwise, but I would take that in the organizational meeting, we'll get them organized, discussion of the objectives of the committee, what we're asking them to do, try to get them to review first, at least those first 3 items, because those should not be that tough. It's just more, make sure everybody's on the same page from their goals and objectives and that kind of stuff. And then tell them in particular, we're concerned about the issues that we can move forward so that once we take possession, the land bank takes possession of the property, we'll be in a position as rapidly thereafter as possible to hopefully put some lots on the marketplace and generate some cash flow to make this whole thing work. So that's the plan.
Good.
Cheryl, I mean,
What time Monday? I'm gonna shoot-
What time Monday?
Shoot for 6.
haven't
or-
got a time. Evening meeting, I would guess it's probably going to be 7-ish. That's time for everybody to get through the day, hopefully grab a bite to eat and then get back here.
Here.
Yeah, and the anticipation would be, we'd be meeting here in this room.
Or the basement, conference room.
Yeah, there's not enough.
Yeah,
There's
I know.
9
We have no,
chairs.
I'd suggest the basement conference room, because you can get more people
they-
around
they're
that
in a
table.
circle.
And then public can be there to observe and
Downstairs?
sit on the side.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That would be good. It's like we do with the animal control thing.
yeah, where the members of the committee sit at the table and you and I, and then everybody
Yeah.
else sits around the edge.
well, and we've got access to the video board there and a whole
Yes.
bunch of other stuff too, so.
You can look up documents.
We'll start putting a packet together for these guys and maps and everything.
So tentatively 7 to 9.
That's fine.
Yep.
What day is that, the
8th.
8th? Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We're done.